So I think, Joe, you had another email that went out. Did you have another proposal
Yeah,
about the IBC?
I've changed it.
Okay. Is there something you want to share with everybody here? Because I'm just working from what Tony gave me.
I'm going back to one that this committee proposed on May 15th.
All right.
Is that where it came from?
Yes, I believe you're correct. So this,
Somehow or another, the word "not" got in there. It's not serving as administrator. The word "not" should never have been in there. That was not what we decided.
yep, I'm not just, you know, I think,
You still find out now.
well, I still wonder where some of that
Yeah.
came from, but it doesn't matter. Because what does matter, so you're talking about the draft on May 15th.
Yes, sir.
All right. And let's just make sure, because Lord knows we got enough of them going around the room, don't we? Anyway,
At that time, we're proposing not to exceed 12-foot floor ceiling height. Delete that. Oh, you're not there yet.
yeah, let me catch up with you here, because I'm working from, I've got the whole document here. I know where the knot came from, probably, but doesn't matter.
Double negative.
All right, so is this the way yours is reading, section 105 buildings? The following, permits shall not be required for the following. Item 1, other than storm shelters, any one story not to exceed 12 foot in ceiling height.
You get rid of that part, yes. You get rid of the not to exceed, because one story is actually 12 foot 7 inches automatically.
So you want it to still say,
Still, one story, detached accessory structure,
okay,
serving as a means of storage.
all right,
Does not exceed 144 square feet. I don't have a problem changing 120, 144, that's no problem.
so the last thing we had back in
Was-
May was
120.
120. So what's y'all's thoughts? Are we changing that as well?
I have no problem with the 144.
144 is not a problem.
Ain't that what Hall County's got?
According to somebody else, I don't know how to check it.
So we changed that to 144.
Would not require utilities.
Will not require utilities such as electricity or plumbing. Let's
Alright.
read this on, because somehow we keep getting lost.
Examples, structures may include but are not limited to pet shelters and other small structures serving as a means of storage. Get rid of the word "not" there. That word "not" just,
I know where that came from. Go ahead.
note that accessory structures not meeting this criteria will require a permit. Building would have to meet setbacks as required by zoning.
Yep. So we talked, you know, that's one of the items that's been discussed greatly is the
Setback.
setbacks. Speaking of, he's timely.
Mayor's late, sit him back.
Oh, that's your copy. I'm just getting mine out of your way.
Excuse me.
No, pull up a chair. Come on up here.
Come on, Joy.
It's tough.
They start throwing things. We just want you to be in the way of it.
I want you to get your part.
I'm gonna block my man.
Good.
Okay.
It's over there, Joseph. You can get it off.
Okay.
Hi, Joey.
How are you?
Welcome to our meeting.
Thank you.
Joey, we just got started and we're going back. Joe had suggested that the committee go back to the draft that was from May 15th and to work from there. And if you go to the section R105-2, work exempt from permit,
Yep.
so I'll let you catch up. And then I'll just tell you what they told me to propose to change.
All right.
All right, so item 1, other than storm shelters, any one story. In the parentheses, we're gonna strike all that not to exceed 12 foot floor to ceiling. So that entire section would be, or that entire, in the parentheses would be struck, detached accessories, structure not serving as a means of
No,
storage.
the word "not" goes.
Not goes
The
away.
word "not" goes away.
Okay.
And then as a means of storage does not exceed, and they're taking that to 144 square feet.
All right.
Will not require utilities such as electricity or plumbing. And an example, structures meeting the criteria include but are not limited to pet shelters and other small structures serving as a means of just
Word not goes away
So
there.
not goes away.
All right.
No, the accessory structure is not meeting the criteria will require a permit. Building will still have to meet setbacks as required by zoning, and that's
That's where you
when you
walk
walked in the door.
All right.
So that being said, I know setbacks have been an issue for y'all to factor in, so
Do we have setbacks for accessory buildings or just strictly residential units?
well,
The
that's,
property line.
let's hear what Joey has to say about that, because I think it's a matter of you can be, well, I'm not gonna put words in Joey's mouth, you can be selective and isolate that to an accessory building if you want to, but Joey, why don't you give them, you know, how you think that might work?
Well, it's more common to put your setbacks in your zoning and your subdivision reg. So, you know, when you subdivide, you got a setback for buildings as opposed to your,
Building code.
yeah, in the building code, that's right. Normally, you just, you determine based upon what's in your zoning ordinance
So
or your
we did
subdivision.
not do that, we probably should have done it, is that what we're hearing? We probably should have addressed accessory buildings as well as residential units.
Well, I think accessory buildings are covered in your,
In zoning.
in zoning. It's just a question of, that's where I'm more accustomed to seeing setbacks being addressed. And then you have your standard exemptions under, you know, for everything, under your zoning ordinance and your subdivision regs as to where there's, the setbacks don't apply. And I want to make sure, that's what I asked Dennis to make sure I was on the same page with everybody, is that if we're talking about just residential zone property, because we've got some commercial with some
Yep.
zero
The
setbacks.
changes we made in the zoning on setbacks and lot sizes, if you remember, were specific to residential only. So we never affected, we didn't change a
Right.
thing on the setbacks for all other uses.
Right, so limiting it to your, to the accessory structures for residential, we have, I mean, we've got the zoning ordinance with us, and we can look through what is defined with accessory structures and where the exemptions are. I'm just telling y'all that this, in a building code, when we start doing setbacks, the building code is primarily, y'all know all this, here's how you build something, and here's the minimum standard, all of those things, as opposed to saying, you've got this setback. The fire code, and, you know, when you have firewalls and that sort of thing, that addresses your setbacks for public safety. So I'm not saying you can't do it in your building code, but once you put it in your building code, what I've heard y'all discussion as being is what are the exemptions from the setback that's set forth that y'all have been discussing.
This was a clarifying statement that says, well, I have to meet the setbacks that are required by zoning.
Right.
Those are wording on it.
Right,
So that's not clarifying enough, or?
Well,
Yes.
so you have two choices, the way I see it. You have, because there's been some discussion, you know, the 5-foot setback. So if you chose to exempt accessory buildings and identified that they would have to meet a minimum of 5-foot setback, which has been suggested, that's your one option. Of course, your other option, and if you change that, you probably want to amend the ordinance in zoning just to reflect accessory buildings are exempt from the regular setbacks.
I would want to address it in zoning.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, in zoning and
That's
in
what
this
we
document.
missed it when we did the zoning ordinance.
Right.
We missed that accessory
No,
structure.
it's in
It's
there,
in
but it's in there as a whole.
As a,
Any building
Any
would
building.
has to meet the setback requirements, and that's the way it's been forever.
so,
If you want to exempt that, that's
okay.
like Joey said, you go back and you address that in
So the
zoning.
accessory building can have a different setback than your living unit.
Yes,
Yeah, you'd have to have
We
something for
did
clarification.
do that, see, right now our setback says any building has to be so.
Right, it's the way it's been forever.
Well, and then you get back into the definition. Yes, I agree with all that, but you get back into what is that setback? Does it require, what is the building that's subject to the setback? And that's just under your definitions as to whether that if you have a non-foundation building, so you got a doghouse, you know, is that subject to it if it's portable?
Yeah, but I think in this case where they've identified, let's say an accessory building that's one story,
Right.
144 square feet,
Right.
then that's giving it definition. Anything above that would be permitted, anything below that, you know,
That's right.
I think that would be easy. What I'm worried about, whatever y'all adopt, it's clear for us to understand where's the trigger.
Yeah,
But what is the issue then if you do what the mayor's saying, you define all of that and then say setback subject to zoning?
Because current zoning, that's what I'm saying, do we want to exempt it? Current zoning would suggest overall any building.
Right.
If you want to exempt it, that's easy to do, but you're gonna have to amend it to do it.
The
in our
zoning
current
ordinance, and
zoning.
that's all I would
Yeah.
prefer is, cause
But
this
we
is your
can leave-
building
we
reg.
can- We can leave it in this and then amend the zoning ordinance, is that the best way to do it, or?
That, to
I think
me,
you see it
is.
in both places.
Well,
That's what I'm saying.
This says
Leave it-
buildings will still have to meet setbacks as required by
The
zoning.
zoning
I
says,
think
okay,
what this should say is building, accessory buildings will still have to will meet 5-foot setbacks, if that's the number y'all arrive at, as required and by zoning, because we'd amend the zoning to reflect that as well. I'd want the same language in either one, just so there's no,
No,
which one do we go and enforce?
But then, I guess what I'm saying is that exempt then from the permit, that's really where I
Yeah,
see
they would
this.
be exempt.
Okay,
Anything more than 140 foot, 44 foot, isn't that what y'all understand? That would require a permit. Anything less, they still have to meet the 5-foot setback. Is that what y'all are saying?
well, I still think it should be more than 5 foot. I don't want nobody putting front 5 foot on, that's my property line.
Well, that's, yeah, and everybody gets their opinion on it, so be sure and share it.
so,
I think you should stay at the zoning, what the zoning, let the zoning dictate that, is my opinion.
let's see what
I
I
don't,
Darn it.
I didn't bring my zoning.
I don't,
Oh,
I
God.
don't see it happening that.
5 foot's close.
What's our minimum?
took them and I stole them again.
Our minimum setback
Oh,
for
wait, I got
residential
you.
zoning
That's what,
is 10 feet off the side, if I remember correctly.
that's what I thought.
10 feet is
I think,
10
or
feet.
12, is it 10 or 12? I think it's
I
12.
think
we got the amended one.
10, 10 is
I didn't
close
bring that.
enough.
Oh, I'm getting in the zoning today.
Well, but it's just because,
Yeah.
that's me,
Yeah.
Mayor, because
I
that's where I'm
understand.
seeing
I'm saying all that,
setbacks.
yeah.
Well, same thing for me. My worry is what do we, well, I don't want to have one document say one thing and not the other mirror that same thing. This was in yellow, so it'd be easy to find.
You remember mine? I know right where mine's at.
Yeah, and it's got it in here. Accessory buildings and uses shall be set back a minimum of, and it says the setback schedule, and I'll double check if there were any, what we put in the amendments, but we had, the minimum was 10 on the side, 15,
Front to back, on the back.
15
Yeah,
in
but
the rear.
that's the old number,
That's
because
the
the
old
new
one.
number, R1, R2, R3 is
Right,
25, 30, and 25 on
Right.
side and rears, and that's again proportional. I don't recommend y'all go back and change the lot sizes.
No.
It's just allowances.
but that one has on the accessory buildings too, then?
Yeah, so I'll have to go back up front, so.
That's right, well, this was just the general, and these were
Yep.
the specific districts.
And I think the other thing that would help us too is back here,
The chart sheet shows-
if what you
It
end up
does.
doing on the R105 is specific and say it's an accessory building,
Yeah.
rather than just call it a building,
Yeah.
so everybody knows same language is there.
All right,
detached accessory building.
And we get,
Well, what about these,
And see, there's a problem too. This allows for 2 stories in height, so that would have to be amended. The same thing, you want the same language either one, y'all can decide. It's not more than 2 stories in height.
Accessory building
That's the definition that we have in the current zoning.
or
that's right.
accessory building?
Accessory building or use, yep.
Okay.
So that's the same thing where we ought to try to get the same language in there to make sure we're not messing that up, which is fine, easy to do.
a question on these prefab buildings that's brought in here? Is it my understanding they're supposed to be tied down also?
So that's something that I have inquired about to make sure that what the code allows in Georgia, or requires in Georgia. So we'll get a clarification on that.
Well, I need a clarification on that.
Yeah, my understanding is the same thing, Gene, but we'll find out.
but tell me why y'all wanna address setbacks in the building code.
So because here it says buildings will still have to meet the setbacks as required by zoning.
Right,
So if you remember, you know, it's been proposed that they not have to meet the setbacks, they would have a setback of only 5 foot off the property
so
line.
then a guy would come in with a variance.
Well, is that what we want? That's what I'm saying, is that what we want to do, or do we want to just allow accessory buildings to have the 5 foot setback?
Right,
I'm just
Build that
asking.
5 feet for your next door neighbor, that's what he says.
right, so he would, I'm with you, I understand the concern, I'm still back on why we're addressing that in my building code rather than my, yeah, I understand everything everybody's saying, but it seems to me that's an issue for the zoning ordinance, and the building code would address the construction of a structure.
I'm not disagreeing with it, I just don't want them to say 2 different things.
Right, okay.
If one says, you know, accessory, that's why I think we can add accessory building to that description, and it'll help us out a lot. And then if it ends up being 5 foot, let's say it's 5 foot in both documents rather, I just don't wanna get down the road. And, you know, we brought in the idea that code enforcement, well, depends on what document he's reading, apparently. And the same would be true as in the subdivision regulations, all the setbacks are quoted as well.
That's right.
So you would have to amend that to reflect the accessory building would be exempt. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Well, that's as easy for me, but I still think the clarity would be the accessory building would be exempt, but would have to meet a 5 foot setback. That's what's been suggested anyway.
Change the zoning for the accessory buildings to be, leave it in zoning, and just say, then we've got, it's required by zoning. I mean, that's what.
Well, that's what it says now, but that doesn't mention 5 foot.
That's what, whatever the number is put in zoning, and just reference it here.
Yep,
Instead,
that's fine.
But
I just don't want them to say 2 different things.
yeah. Is that making sense?
Yeah, that's what,
So actually, we messed up the zoning is what we did, basically. So, that's another, go back to another day, right?
well,
But how hard is that to do? Is that public hearings and everything, right?
we should have at
Yeah.
least, yes, yeah.
Way to get a line anywhere around.
Or let them, if somebody wants to, if they're, they can always apply for a variance in the interim. I'm saying that even if you put it in your building code.
It's gotta be
let-
done.
Yeah, then just, you're back to what Dennis is saying, then somebody's gonna,
Yeah.
then the neighbor who's complaining, both are gonna be right, is what I'm telling you, because your ordinances are gonna conflict.
it needs to be same on
It's
these, both of
exactly
them.
Right.
Amen.
And we don't want this to be just like zoning, because is that what we're hearing?
You
Does
know,
it- 'cause
I
it-
just
'cause
think if
zoning-
you got the same words in each
Yeah.
one, there can't be a confusion. That's
Right.
my point. If you want to allow for the 5 foot setback for for accessory buildings, then you just say it in both documents. You amend the zoning to reflect it and the subdivision regulations, because it's quoted in there as well. And it just brings clarity.
But in the meantime, we got to enforce this somehow. Now,
Well, I think it's all about intent at that point. We know if the intent is to go forward with a zoning amendment,
Okay,
then I think, we won't hold things in hiatus or go after them on code.
since that's gonna be a prolonged process. I'm just trying to not hold this up anymore, that's what I'm trying
Right.
to do.
So the suggestion would be if you adopted the 5-foot element in here, in R105.2 gave a little clarity because you're identifying as accessory building, and then propose the amendment for the zoning and the subdivision at the same time, then you just allow the process to go forward.
So they still say what we wanna do. Am I? No. I'm trying to figure out how we're gonna word all this stuff. Does that work, the building will still have to meet setbacks as required by zoning, does that say it?
Yes,
Is what we need to say? And zoning will be changed to reflect what we really want to say is what the distance is, 5 feet, 10 feet, whatever it is.
right. You're just gonna have two different setbacks, one for your,
Building and one for the accessory building.
Right.
That was the intent to start with.
right.
We never intended to have it straight behind the house, I don't think, set beside the house. Just
Well, that's the way we've done it and that's the way everybody else does it.
beside it behind it.
Well, it doesn't, well, it depends on where you can locate
Yeah,
it,
right.
but
You got
it's
one
never
that-
allowed in the
yeah,
front. But I
right.
mean, for
But
years,
the
when
front
somebody
yard-
comes in and makes an application to put that in, we're measuring off the
Right,
property line.
right.
So that's been at whatever the zoning book required at that time.
And right now, everything is one setback exactly.
Yes,
So we got.
Well, it isn't one exactly, because it depends on that
Well,
particular district.
Right,
But each district's different in size,
Right,
location,
right.
yep,
the lot size, yeah,
right.
but your house and your accessory structure are not necessarily different in zoning right now, what they need to be.
right.
That's a choice, that's what you're proposing, yes. So that would work. Is that good by y'all? Joey, you think we got our marching orders?
I do.
What does zoning say on the setback?
Depending on district.
It's on.
It depends on the residential district, like I said, we did not
25,
affect.
35, and 35,
Yeah,
is that-
just get it.
There you go, Gene.
So. Get to it.
that's one reason we did that, make it a lot wide enough to put an accessory beside the house as opposed to making it go behind the house. I think that's one reason we made them such a big
Yeah,
setback.
that's principal building setback, so
There you go.
principal is what Joey came in talking about to begin with.
Yeah.
We knew we were talking about the home.
Right.
This will give it more definition.
Right,
So we'll identify accessory buildings in there and y'all can state the size on that. Currently, Gene, back to yours, the sides were R1 25, R2 was 30, R3 was 25, and R4 was 40 feet.
Well, in my opinion, it don't need to be less than 10 feet, the accessory building instead of 5 feet.
Say that again?
We'll put that in zoning then.
In my opinion, it shouldn't be 5 feet, it shouldn't be no less than 10 feet for accessory building off the property line.
Historically, that's what it's been, isn't it?
So again, going back, this is dramatically different from what your old zoning used to allow for. Because it was as little as 10 from the property line and 15 depending on it.
Right.
Y'all, when you made this change, I believe your goal at that time was, in the PRDs and R1, R2, R3, was to set a lot size that would be the minimum. We weren't concentrated on accessory buildings at that time. Remember, we drew the little diagrams out in the parking
The
lot?
accessory building, I still think shouldn't be 10 feet off the property line, in my opinion, not 5.
Well, that's a matter, that's an
That's-
item you put on the agenda
Right.
to address, and it's voted 5, 10.
Public hearing, you know. Here we
Well,
go.
not just public hearing, but I mean, at the end of the day,
I'm
you
not,
wanna
I'm
be
not
able
trying
to
to hold,
say.
I'm not, it's been suggested, I'm not trying to hold a gun to anybody
I know.
as far as
No, you're
the
entitled to your
money,
opinion
the
too.
money and, as far as permitting and all this,
When I put my accessory building, I made sure that at least 10 feet off my property line, just in case, because at the time, that's what it was.
well,
Yeah, which is not unusual, and this is dramatically different.
Right.
I think if you're gonna put a accessory building on, it shouldn't be less than 10 feet off the property line. Is my opinion.
So trying to move this along, that would be an option that would be adopted later. We do know that we need to identify it as accessory building specifically because in here right now it identifies the principal building. So that would be the addition. And then, you know, y'all could decide, go through the public hearing process for amendment and decide at the final on whether or not it's gonna be 5, 10, 15. I'm trying to move this along is all I'm trying to do.
That's what we're saying.
My suggestion is 10 feet.
That's another debate.
Well, it is, but it's, you know, it should be considered. I mean, everybody, as we ought to hear from the public and hear what their views are, and y'all may arrive at, who knows, you might arrive at 7.5. I'm not gonna predict it, I don't think Joey is either, so. So we wanna do that?
Well, that's my suggestion. I mean, that's up.
Darn it, you good
That's
with that, Mr. Mayor?
That'd be,
So the next item, just so we get clarity on here, you currently have it written back from the May 15th version, fences not over 8 feet
right?
high, so these would not require a permit, for retaining walls not over 4 feet in height, measure from the bottom of the footing to the top of the wall, less a supporting surcharge. Item 4 would not require.
What does that surcharge mean?
No, it's not part of the regular document. I'd have to go back and see what clarity is on that.
Another way to get money?
No, supporting,
No.
that's supporting a surcharge. That's what it implies.
Surcharge.
That's what surcharge,
Yeah,
I don't know what word, I said, a retaining wall is in surcharge. I'm not sure.
well, let me go back to what was in the
Maybe what it-
original document. Let me see what was in there.
Oh, excuse me a minute.
Something about retaining walls, I don't know. I just,
Yeah, we're gonna find out. Just make sure we all understand what it is, because it has the same language.
yeah,
So we'll find out.
I saw, I said, exactly what is surcharge on retaining wall? It wouldn't come to me.
Somebody smarter than me and you
Yes, sir.
that does building
That-
permits every day.
It doesn't take long. Water tanks, we didn't change.
Yep, so wouldn't require for water tanks supporting direct upon grade of capacity not to exceed 5,000 gallons. The ratio of height to diameter or width does not exceed 2:1. And then sidewalks and driveways still require driveway location permit approval. Is that good? The next item, of course, we never said,
Cosmetics.
well, it is cosmetics, but it wouldn't require a permit.
Right.
Painting, papering, tiling, carpeting, cabinets, countertops, similar finish, we've never done that, and hopefully y'all never will.
No, but that needs to be defined some kind of way, what the cosmetics are.
What you did.
Well, we just did with the paper, painting, papering, tiling, carpeting, cabinets, countertops, and similar finish work. So that kinda gives, we can add more definition, no doubt. You know, but that specifically kinda gives it some definition. That's probably one of
Would you
those,
like repairing a piece of siding or something like that, that's cosmetic,
Yeah.
that ain't.
well, we see that as maintenance.
Right.
We've never permitted maintenance. If it's structural, electrical, or plumbing additions, then we would continue to require a permit. But, yeah.
Also, this is this is new construction, because this instruction is a different ordinance, a different code.
So this is residential elements that we're talking about right now. Are you talking about still item 6?
Yeah, is it residential new construction? Is it residential remodel?
This would apply,
To new construction, because remodel is existing building, in IBC code.
yeah, so we never go back in, that's what,
Right.
same thing. This,
Right.
to me, they apply them both. We're not, somebody
Right.
does restoration unless they're dealing with structural integrity, electrical or plumbing, we don't require, you know,
Right.
to do ongoing maintenance. Goes back to some of the other arguments we've heard through the years. So that would apply in either new or restoration or whatever you want. I don't want anybody telling me what color I can paint. I know y'all don't want it either.
I don't tell anybody that either.
Yep.
Well, nobody wants to.
Item 7, wouldn't require a permit prefabricated swimming pools that are less than 52 inches.
It was 24 originally.
Yep. That was a change.
We jumped that way up.
Item 8,
A question on that one. Don't they have to have a fence around that or a ladder, even if it's 52 inches?
so you have to look at your zoning that says that yes, for a pool. Now, it's been argued, not for me to argue, but I've heard the argument before, is an above-ground pool, a fence module. Joe, you want to comment on that?
No.
I don't.
I'm looking at safety. Somebody kid
Oh,
come over.
I agree with you.
Somebody kid come over, nobody out there, and that kid gets out there and drowns in that pool.
Ask your liability insurance.
Yep, I was gonna
Homeowners
say,
insurance, because they're
Go
gonna
back
tell
on the
you.
insurance.
Yeah,
Yep. That's one of those where you might want to consider what serves in the best, your best interest.
I was just asking a question, I didn't know.
That's a good question,
You know.
one that's been posed any number of times.
I don't believe on 150 inches you'd have to have a fence around it, would you?
well, I think your insurance is gonna require it. I don't know that I've seen that in a.
Well, my insurance required me to take a slide down,
Yeah, but
water slide.
I know it. They don't like diving boards
No,
anymore.
they don't
either.
like diving board. I didn't take it down.
But I don't know I've ever seen a building code that required a fence around pools.
Yep.
I
I think
don't
they're out
know.
there, I don't think they're in the state of Georgia. Because I've had people bring that up before. I said, you know, you ought to check with your homeowners, I'm like you.
I could see an in-ground pool where you'd have to have a fence around it.
Yeah, just for,
No, that's not prefab. In-ground,
Safety
not prefab.
protection.
Well, you can't bury them plastic ones. It says prefab.
right.
All right, the next item that wouldn't require a permit is swings and other playground equipment. The next item would be, would not require a permit, window awning supported by an exterior wall that do not project more than 54 inches from the exterior wall and do not require additional, and then, I think that's a broke up, let's see what
Yeah,
that
it
is.
is. Support.
Support, so that,
Deep.
then item 10 was decks not exceeding 200 square foot, so that would be structural. Support. And then item 10 had read decks not exceeding 200 square feet in area that are not, and back then, in May 10th, in the May 15th, that item was recommended to be struck at that time.
I believe it still were to be struck.
I have given that some thought, and I'm still not sure what I want. I'm not sure if I want to give them 15 inches tall or not. My mind's thinking, don't require a permit if it's only 15 inches tall. If it's 30 inches tall, require a permit. That's where my mind went to this.
I think the current code would require, that's when everything begins to trigger for railing and along those lines, at 30 inches. So what this did say is the exemption would be decks not exceeding 200 feet in an area that are not more than 30 inches above grade at any one point and are not attached to a dwelling and do not serve as the exit door required by section R3. So, Garner, I'm putting you on the spot. So you would be fine that those decks wouldn't have to be permitted. Is that what you're saying?
Right. I think the insurance should
And
cover it.
Gene, excuse me, Joe, you're suggesting
Wait a minute,
that it would be
wait a
15
minute.
inches.
If you strike this, these are items that are exempt. If you strike this out,
Well,
you
that's why I was getting some clarity.
That's why
He
you-
doesn't want that to be permitted.
I don't want it to be permitted.
Yeah. he doesn't want
Plain
it,
and
so that
simple.
would stay in there.
Okay, so that stays in,
Right,
okay.
right. That's why I was getting some clarity.
You're right.
In your case, you would allow for that, but you'd want to see the 30 inches changed to 15.
My mind, right now, I'm thinking that, I'm not, I'm still torn between it. I'm not sure.
Gene?
I haven't changed my mind on it from jump day. I think it should be permitted. Or you can go out there, and just like we said, any jack day can go out there and put up something. And if it's not put up right, I know this is talking about going back to the homeowners, but you need to take the responsibility yourself besides just the homeowner's insurance to make sure that structure is safe for anybody that wants to get on it.
So here's
If they
what,
want, if
yeah.
they want to lower it, if they want to lower it, I'd go with lowering, but 30 inches, that's getting up back to where it should have.
So why don't
Yeah,
we
but-
suggest this? You could have 3 options available that the council could vote on. The first one would be back to what Garnet was saying, that this wouldn't require a permit as it's written. That being item 10, you could say item 10B would be, if that's 10A, 10B would recognize the 15-foot
15 inch.
or 15 inches. Sorry.
You're getting pretty high
Everything's
now.
gonna fall off top of their heads after all. And I mean, really, those are really the only 2 options you have. Either you adopt it or you don't.
Another thing I have too, a 30-inch deck is gonna require stairs to get to it.
So that would be, yeah, that's part of the
That's-
code. But
that's all-
believe,
that's all
interestingly
we
enough,
do.
I don't think they have to have rails.
No matter the width of it, anything.
They should have.
Oh, I think it's all about height again. I think that's where the trigger comes
I
in.
was thinking it was 8 foot.
The only reason I say that is because you're looking at a guilty party here. I have a step-down deck, and it was step by step. Is, you know, so in other words, step down to one landing, step down to another landing, and when I exceeded 3 steps is when I exceeded the height differential and had to have a rail, or had to have handrails.
But that's not stairs though.
No. Well, 3 steps were.
But I thought you said landing, landing, landing.
That's what I had originally started with, landing, step down, one landing, step down, and then when it came to the backside, that's where the insurance company said, building code says you gotta have a handrail. So I did.
I'll say something on that.
I think that's your option, throw it out there. At the end of the day, you've all had your debate, you're able to stress your points, and you can vote. Joe, do you don't think that's do you think that's a good option to give them to let it take that item to a vote?
Sure.
You know, that way everybody gets their chance to hear their views on it. And then,
That's fair.
In all of these, since we're amending the code, I mean, under the law, whatever we approve, then we've got to send, I mean, the state may send it back and say, well, give me justification for, give DCA justification for whatever changes we've made to the building code. So we may have another chance to address these.
I'm gonna share. So y'all good with that? That's what we can do. We can give some clarity. We'll give you something on paper. You'll see what's voted on. I'm gonna grab something real quick. I'm gonna show y'all what.
So what,
About government sticks sometimes into their little stick.
so what we're saying is option 1, strike. Option 2, 15 inches. Option 3, 30 inches. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Yes,
As,
Yep.
that these are
that's on,
they are,
on 10.
these are permitted, okay, if you strike it, you don't permit, I mean, you permit everything, okay,
Yeah, if you strike it, you gotta get a permit.
right.
If you leave it at 30 inches, no permit, or you leave it at 15 inches.
No striking it. No striking it then. Leave it low at 30.
So if we don't
If you
think
strike it,
sometimes
Yeah.
government can be a challenge, this is from the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Quality Planning District. And these are water efficiency code requirements, local amendment to plumbing code. So sometimes we just can't win. Fortunately, it looks as if the city won't have to address this at this time. But the same thing, we'll put it out there soon enough, but it doesn't look like we'll have to adopt it to remain in compliance. But see, some of these things, they just come down the tubes and we don't, I'm not a big fan of Metropolitan North Georgia Water Quality District because I don't think we have representation. I don't think they ought to be able to legislate what we would be required locally. This, however, gave you some options, so I know it's been trying, but are y'all satisfied with what amendments we're gonna propose as we described today?
Option 1, strike. Option 2, 15 inches. Option 3, 30 inches. Is that what?
Well, I think just for clarity's sake,
You don't need
if you leave it in there, if item 10 remains item 10, it won't require a permit.
Right.
B would be, if that's considered 10A, B would be the 15 inches. And then, of course, I guess the third option would be strike it entirely. And the other thing that I have to point out to y'all, in my years in Lula, I've never seen this application. I can't find, I couldn't, there probably is somebody out there.
New Image, it's outside the city, one from New Image.
Well, but I'm
Up
just
on the
saying
up on the
here,
tree.
so, same thing, I just hadn't seen the application. And, we don't wanna take away anybody's rights, we wanna enhance them if we can, so. All right, y'all good with that?
Good.
Gene?
That's it.
Well, they say amen to that.
Can I say something?
I think we're done with this portion, and we're gonna have a planning commission meeting shortly. So y'all good?
Is that all we have on the agenda?
I thought, didn't want to roll over any other. Wasn't sure how many years we'd be, or how long we'd be. What'd I say, 15-foot height before?
Yeah.
I was a little gun shy.
That's a little high.
More than that.
Joy can't even get off that and step up and down.
Just get that up their way, get the table out of their way, right?
Y'all good?
What's your agenda tonight? I hadn't heard, Joe.
We're just gonna revisit, and we're gonna start looking at that map right there and decide how that might change. Does it change based on your zoning and your comp plan? So, that'll be another typical task.
Did we confuse you, Joey?
No. Just need y'all to understand that when we can amend the code, we just have to send it to DCA before it becomes
I'd forgotten
final.
about that. I'd forgotten about that.
So
They
we
can
gotta
shoot,
get our
they can
part.
shoot us down too.
Yeah.
And start over again.
Yeah. You know what the
Okay.
bushings are that goes in between the deck and the band of the house?
The good news is I don't have to know, but I know what you're talking about.
Non-tactical deck of the house. So are y'all gonna allow that?
That's a code issue, not for a city manager to decide.